After the flood, and after Noah and his sons and their wives went forth from the ark, there was a man begotten by his grandson Cush, whose name was Nimrod. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which means confusion. The name Nimrod means rebellion. Nimrod was a rebel against God, and as the leader of the kingdom of Babel, Nimrod was also connected with the building of the Tower of Babel. And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven." According to the historian Josephus, Nimrod said he would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. The motive for building the Tower of Babel, according to Josephus, was to protect humanity against another flood. Before the flood, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. When God saw that the children of men were building a tower in rebellion against him, he wanted to put an end to it and said, "Go to, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth. Tradition says that Nimrod's wife was also his mother and granddaughter of Noah. According to various legends, Semiramis became pregnant after engaging in an adulterous affair while married to Nimrod. Around this time, Nimrod dies a violent and untimely death. In an effort to retain power and to hide her misdeeds, Semiramis makes the most audacious claim. She publicly declares that upon Nimrod's death, he had been resurrected as the god of the sun. As the sun god, Nimrod used his sun rays to miraculously inseminate Semiramis with a child. This child was thus considered to be divinely conceived. The child's name was Tammuz, which she claimed was the reincarnation of Nimrod. Thus, Semiramis was both Nimrod's wife and mother. After the scattering that occurs at the Tower of Babel, the story of the miraculous conception of this child disseminated throughout the world and led to the rise of sun worship, along with the various birth, death, and rebirth cults that are littered through history. These mystery religions of future generations adopted different names for Nimrod, Semiramis, and their child Tammuz. The statue of Jupiter was renamed Peter. The statue of Hermes is shown as Christ the Good Shepherd. The statue of the Madonna and Child was retitled the Virgin Mary and Baby Jesus. Christianity had even adopted the pagan worship of the sun on the day of the sun, or Sunday, instead of the Bible Sabbath. And so not only did the Bishop of Rome gain charge over the Western Roman Empire, but in 538 AD, the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian gave a decree acknowledging the Bishop of Rome as the head of all churches. Church of Rome, or Papal Rome, which we now call the papacy, became the power in Rome. The civil power, the political power, and the religious power. The book of Daniel was written about 600 years before the time of Christ. The entire book was written by Daniel the prophet himself, except for chapter 4, which was written by King Nebuchadnezzar. The name Daniel comes from a juxtaposition of two words, Elohim, meaning God, and Dan, meaning judge. The name Daniel means God is judge. The story of Daniel began in a tragedy. God's people have been disobedient to God's law, and since they were stubborn and disobeyed, God had to send them adversity. The nation of Babylon came to destroy Jerusalem and carry away some of their finest and best young people into Babylon, where they were trained in the customs, societies, government, and culture of the Babylonians. Daniel was one of those who were trained to be among the wise men or magicians in Babylon. Now in Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had a dream that disturbed him from his sleep, and he had a sense that the dream was important, but he forgot what the dream was about. So he called the Chaldeans. These were some of the wise men of Babylon, and asked them to tell him what the dream was and its interpretation. The king was asking them to read his mind. This was impossible. But remember, he pays these wise men to know things that normal people wouldn't know. So he expected them to know the dream and its interpretation. The king was furious to have learned that these wise men could not do what they said they could do. And so he ordered the death of all the wise men in the courts of Babylon. Daniel was one of those to be put to death. When it came time for Daniel to be killed, he asked why the decree was so urgent. One of the king's guards, Arioch, made it known to Daniel the reason why. And so Daniel petitioned for time so that he and his Israelite friends could pray about the dream. In verse 19 of Daniel 2, the Bible says that God gave Daniel the dream in a night vision. So Daniel boldly met with the king to tell him what the dream was, and that most importantly, there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets and alone can interpret the dream. And the dream was this. King Nebuchadnezzar saw a giant statue with the head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet and toes, partly of iron and partly of potter's clay. Then a stone was cut out without hands and struck the statue on its feet and crushed the whole statue completely. And then that stone became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. And so God continued to give Daniel visions. Most of those visions were of prophetic events that were on the verge of coming to pass and stretches all the way to the very end of time. In Daniel 7, Daniel was given a vision of 4 beasts that arise from a whirlwind out of the sea. The first was a lion with wings, who receives a man's heart and then stands upright like a man. The second was a bear hunched on one side with 3 ribs in his mouth. The third was a leopard with 4 heads and with 4 wings of a fowl. And then the fourth was a diverse beast with 10 horns and iron teeth. Daniel considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. The papacy. Is the papacy a small kingdom? The Vatican is one of the smallest kingdoms in the world. Number 2, did it come up among divided Rome? The Vatican came up among divided Rome or Europe. It was established in Rome, Italy. Number 3, was it established after AD 476? The History of the Christian Church, Volume 3, page 327. The Roman Church state power became supreme in Christendom in 538 AD due to a letter of the Roman Emperor Justinian known as Justinian's Decree, which set up and acknowledged the Bishop of Rome as the head of all churches. It gave the Roman Church state political power, civil power, as well as ecclesiastical power. This letter became part of Justinian's code, the fundamental law of the empire, and that year, Pope Vigilius ascended the throne under the military protection of Belisarius. The Vatican established its power and its authority in AD 538, which was shortly after year AD 476. Did the papacy pluck up 3 of those 10 tribes that divided Rome? The Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths were 3 of the 10 tribes that divided Rome. They denied the teachings of the Church of Rome, and so what the Bishop of Rome did is he called upon Justinian to get rid of those 3 tribes. And sure enough, the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths are now extinct. No modern day descendants whatsoever. Number 5, is it a diverse kingdom? The answer is yes. This kingdom is a union of church and state. France was a kingdom. England was a kingdom. Germany was a kingdom. But the Vatican is a church as well as a kingdom. It is a diverse kingdom. Number 6, does it have a man at its head? It is the Pope. The Pope is the papacy's figurehead. Number 7, does it speak blasphemy? Now remember the 2 Bible definitions of blasphemy. Definition number 1 is for a man to claim to be God on earth, and definition number 2 is for a man to claim to have the power to forgive sin. Does the papacy claim to be God on earth? The Archbishop of Venice, prior to becoming Pope Pius X, says, the Bishop of Rome is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, but he is Jesus Christ himself, hidden under the veil of flesh. Does the Bishop of Rome speak? It is Jesus Christ who speaks. The head of this entity claims to be God on earth. It even claims to rule for God on earth. The great encyclical letters to Leo XIII, page 304. We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty. This entity, the papacy, claims to have the authority of God. This is blasphemy. Does it claim to have the power to forgive sin? Dignity and duties of the priest, page 34. Were the Redeemer, Jesus Christ, to descend into a church and sit in a confessional to administer the sacrament of penance, and a priest to sit in a confessional, Jesus would say over each penitent, ego te absolvo, which is Latin for I forgive you, and the priest would likewise say over each of his penitents, ego te absolvo, and the penitents of each would be equally absolved. That means they are claiming that if Jesus forgives me of my sins and a Catholic priest forgives you of your sins, we are both equally forgiven. They are claiming the power to forgive sin. That is blasphemy. Characteristic number 8. Did it make war with God's people, the saints? The Roman Church state has shed more Christian blood than any other entity that has ever existed on earth via the Inquisition. Over 100 million Christians were killed by the papacy during a period called the Dark Ages. The reason why they called it the Dark Ages was because the Bible was illegal. If the papacy caught you with a Bible in your hands back in those days, you are immediately taken in for heresy and then tortured and eventually killed.
Secrets will be revealed. What you see before you is the world-famous St. Peter's Basilica, the symbol of the Vatican. But these Vatican City walls hold far more than just a church. Deep within the complex lies the Vatican Secret Archives, a vault containing millions of sensitive documents spanning over 12 centuries. These have long been strictly off limits to the general public. Until now. Ready to go beyond the tourist-trodden halls? Follow me. Through the Basilica's enormous front entrance, we'll transition from the open-air St. Peter's Square into the multi-layered indoor complex. See those guards dressed in blue and yellow? They're actually from Switzerland, and it's their unwavering duty to protect the Pope. Let's head inside. Directly connected to the right flank of the Basilica is perhaps the world's most famous room, the Sistine Chapel. Combined, the Basilica and the chapel are said to carry a $1 billion value. This rectangular brick building features 6 arched windows on each side of the walls. However, the undeniable focal point is, well, look up. Michelangelo's ceiling. 5 million people walk through this room every year, and while we enter for free, most tourists pay 14 euros each. That's 70 million euros straight into the Vatican's pocket. As we leave the chapel behind us, follow me into the Vatican Library. It's here, adjacent to the main library, where we find our hidden entrance to Catholicism's most confidential room, the Vatican Apostolic Archive. Centuries worth of secrets hide behind this door. Only VIP guests, like us, who possess a pre-approved letter granted by the archive's prefect are allowed to set foot inside. Ready? Keycard? Check. Combination code? Look away, please. Check. Letter of approval? Check. Alrighty, let's go underground. These seemingly endless shelves of books, stacked from floor to ceiling, run far deeper than the naked eye may realize. If we took all of the shelves and stretched them end to end, the Vatican archives would stretch some 53 miles, about 4 times the length of Manhattan Island. That's a lot of shelves, and they hold a lot of information. Let's stroll down the central corridor and see what we find. On our left sits the section containing notes relating to the 1633 trial against Galileo. Beyond it, in that small dossier, is a letter sent from Michelangelo to Pope Julius II. As we move over to our next row, we find a box dedicated to the trials against the Knights Templar from 1307. While there's a year's worth of Knights Templar reading, the crown jewel is this document, the Chinon parchment. Unrolled, well, see for yourself, this scroll is an astounding 197 feet long. Supposedly, it was lost for hundreds of years, yet here it is, right before our eyes. As we continue down the concrete-floored walkway, here's the section dedicated to the Intercatera. For those unfamiliar, the Intercatera was a decree issued by Pope Alexander VI in 1493 that essentially split the world between the Spanish and the Portuguese. Next up is a highly restricted section, the documents from World War II. Notice the no entry sign? That's because everything dated after 1939 is still closed to the public, including the papers of Pope Pius XII. This section has spurred quite a controversy. Why? Because Pius XII's silence during the war led to some questioning which side he truly supported. The letters behind this wire casing, which looks similar to this one, may reveal the ultimate truth. This is one of the church's most controversial mysteries, one which we might never truly solve. Despite the immense historical significance and billions of dollars worth of financial value, scratch that, priceless value, these letters, scrolls, and decrees aren't sealed with airtight technology. While we do have some safety deposit-style boxes against the wall, as you can see, most of the contents are simply held in red folders, labeled with brief identifiers. Curia Romana. That means Court of Rome. Some other shelves, like these over here, are full of cardboard containers with damaged corners and faded colors, clearly showing their age. Are these documents ever to be released to the public? Well, not for a long time. At an absolute minimum, these papers are only shared once they're 75 years old. At that point, they still belong to the Pope. Like all libraries, the Vatican also features dedicated reading rooms, just like this one. Take note of the sacred art hung on its walls. These pieces represent just a sliver of the estimated 70,000 total artwork within the Vatican Museum, a collection worth billions of dollars all up. But hey, judging by this, they can afford it. The best calculations suggest the Vatican Bank holds between $10 and $15 billion. But what about expenses? Apparently a substantial amount of that cash goes to paying staff. In 2014, for example, staff payments were the Vatican's biggest expense, shelling out a total of 126.6 million euros for 2,880 employees. Anyway, enough reading. Follow me outside the reading room and down into, ready to be surprised? A secret bunker. The door we just walked through has an airlock, making this entire underground shelter fireproof. It was designed to, of course, protect the most fragile documents in case of emergency. Onwards. In there is the school. Through the glass window, you can see a clergyman nose deep in what looks like a history book. The desks are long and flat, the walls are painted with beautiful artwork, and the floor is checkered marble. Time for some sunlight, don't you think? As we exit the library and museum area into the lush and beautifully landscaped Vatican gardens, take a moment to soak in the significance of what we just saw. Not only did we just explore what is officially the world's smallest country and the only UNESCO World Heritage country,
know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet.
Certainly. 1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle. The Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945. And, the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet.
Certainly.
Let's talk about how the Vatican is hiding a time-traveling device from us. It's called a chronovisor, and it was developed in the 1960s by this gentleman in the middle, Father Ernetti, and these two other guys who ended up working for NASA. This guy over here just happened to be a Nazi before he went to NASA, but we'll talk about that later. In the 1970s, Father Ernetti took a boat ride, and he happened to be on the boat with another priest. They got to gabbing, and Father Ernetti spilled the beans about the chronovisor. He said it was very real how he had went back in time, and he had witnessed the crucifixion of Christ. He had witnessed the last few days of Christ. He had witnessed the final supper. He had witnessed the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah. Very heavy claims, right? Father Ernetti had proof, though. He provided the blueprints for it and told him exactly how it worked. Now, reportedly, this device had several antennas that would pick up on light and sound waves throughout multiple frequencies and translate these frequencies into a screen that would show a past event, a present event, or a future event. Now, in the wrong hands, think about how powerful that could be. You can witness anybody at any time, at any point. Of course, this was all supposed to be a secret because seeing anybody you want at any point in time is pretty dangerous in the wrong hands. So Vatican told Father Ernetti and everyone else involved, do not speak of this. It took Father Ernetti 10 years before he had this boat conversation to tell anyone about it. And then, in 1988, the Vatican released a decree stating anyone found to be using a device like the chronovisor would be excommunicated from the church. 2002, the man that took the boat ride with Father Ernetti released a tell-all book about the chronovisor and went to his bed believing in the chronovisor. We all know the Vatican has their Chamber of Secrets. The rumor is that this is locked in the Chamber of Secrets.
This was actually very weird because it was a public occurrence and all of a sudden it was wiped clean. Like everyone stopped talking about it, news stopped reporting about it, but it happened in 2007 when an orange flying disc flew over the Vatican and stayed there for 8 minutes. This disc hovered for 8 minutes and then disappeared. It was believed that this was a real, actual UFO sighting. What makes it so creepy is that the Vatican has multiple documents about UFOs and aliens being real. It is said that they actually have proof that aliens helped the ancient Sumerian in creating the wheel, irrigation systems, and even the ability to count time down to seconds and minutes. So this report was in 2007, and it was reported in a photograph, multiple photographs that mysteriously disappeared after this event. In 2007, when an orange disc was hovering over the Vatican and just stayed there for a certain amount of time and left. This is an actual document that a general put out about UFOs and the Vatican. The print is really small, so I can't read it to you guys, but I will do a separate video on this in its entirety because this to me is the most interesting fact. But let's move on to the next one. Vatican holds some history that is very, very dark, as well as sinister in nature and just too crazy to be true. Do you know that they actually dug up a corpse of a pope and put him on trial? Yes, Pope Stephen VI ordered the exhumption of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, so that his corpse could stand trial for various charges. It is said that during this trial, an earthquake actually struck the Vatican, shaking the very grounds that they were holding this trial on, yet he kept going. They held the Pope accountable to a multitude of charges, and it said that that man who is yelling and screaming actually, he was visibly insane. They said he just went on a rant. He was yelling as if the man was alive and could respond, but of course he could not defend himself, but somehow they said he was fit to stand trial. There's an article where it says that in the middle of that trial, the earthquake shook the room, and this was a clear sign of God according to embellishments of later commentators. So people who recorded this, when they were jotting it down, they said what was going on. So they found him guilty of stealing the throne from the Pope who was actually putting him on trial, but the madness did not end there. So after Stephen's victory of convicting a man, his victory didn't last long at all. Actually, what they did was they took him, 3 of his fingers, threw him in prison where he was actually I wish that was the worst to come. So his predecessor after him, now that we know 2 of them are 2 weeks later, the next pope was, and only 1 day after that pope was, the next pope was. So that's 4 popes that were in a less than 2-month span. The Vatican is actually built over a necropolis. Yes, so where thousands of people are praying, right underneath them are thousands of corpses that lie in a necropolis, which is basically a large graveyard, but it contains tombs and it is ancient. For all my visual besties, up top is known as the Vatican, or St. Peter's Basilica to be exact, and below where you see the blue, those are the tombs that you can actually tour. Yeah, so including these tombs, only 5% of the underground of the entire Vatican City has been unearthed and explored, which means we're down there with those past people. There's some other too. Oh, and they have a lot of famous people that are buried in these tombs. St. Peter is said to be buried in these tombs. If you don't know who he is, he was one of Jesus's 12 apostles, along with a Holy Roman Emperor and a Queen of Sweden. They have a stolen Egyptian monument right in the center of the Vatican. The Vatican obelisk was stolen from the Egyptians. Not only did Rome siege these obelisks from Egypt, they actually exorcised them while putting them in the middle of St. Peter's Square. Don't believe me? There's the document. I don't know why you have to exorcise an Egyptian relic after you stole it, but whatever. Oh, here's that obelisk, and they actually have Egyptian carvings still on them, and there are only 6 left in Egypt. So this one being in Rome, I don't know. So the obelisk was moved in 1586 because of where it was at. It was covered in, you know what, I'm not going to say it, but it's what runs through everyone's body. The liquid stuff, the red stuff, yeah, the base of it was surrounded in that, so they actually moved.
This is CNN. The Vatican has tightened up its guidance on recognizing supernatural phenomena such as apparitions of the Virgin Mary or seemingly soaked crucifixes. The new guidelines replace rules drawn up in 1978. And basically it says that they shouldn't act independently, blah, blah. The changes made by the Vatican's doctrinal office aim to bring the Church up to date in responding to the swift spread of claims or apparitions online. According to the document released by the Vatican Friday, the new procedure will allow for faster decisions while respecting popular devotion when it comes to assessing claims of the supernatural phenomenon. The Vatican said only for the Holy Office to express a different decision later. In other instances, a bishop might decide whether or not an occurrence was supernatural, only for his successor to conclude the opposite, the statement continued. The new Vatican guidelines say, as a rule, bishops and church officials will not declare whether alleged phenomenon are supernatural or not, leaving this decision to the Pope. Head of the DDF, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, told reporters that often these events have led to the great richness of spiritual fruits, growth in faith, devotion, fraternity, and service. So basically, the guidelines for these apparitions are that before, someone could decide if it was legit or not, and now nobody has the authority to say it unless it's brought to the attention of the Pope and he decides.
Vatican Secret Archives is on this list. It is a very real 53 miles of shelving holding 35,000 volumes of catalogs, 12 centuries worth of documents on history, religion, and who knows what. But there's a lot of mystery behind these secret archives because they're absolutely not public. You have to go through this really thorough vetting process and be over the age of 75 to even look at them. And they keep all these documents in this really fortress-looking part of the Vatican. A lot of people have conspiracies about these archives, like the Catholic Church knowing about aliens, or other things like how people think history is written by the winners. Maybe they have documentations on what actually happened in history. There's like contradictions of what we've been taught. But you know, if there wasn't anything in there that needs to be hidden, why would they keep them a secret? But yeah, people think that they have things like secret war crimes documented in there, mysterious teachings from before the Great Flood, histories of great civilizations that got reset, and some people even think that the Library of Alexander wasn't burned but was moved to the Vatican. But what I found kind of strange is that the Vatican Secret Archives is not technically owned by the Catholic Church, but actually by the Pope. So it's very strange.
The Vatican is sitting on top of some shady secrets, and they're sitting in front of something that looks shady as hell too. Let's just put that out there. But I also think that they are hiding alien life from us, and let's get into the reasons why. Now, the Vatican owns the LBT sitting on top of Mount Graham. LBT stands for Large Binocular Telescope, and it's actually the world's largest optical telescope. So if anyone was going to be able to see alien life, it would be the Vatican. Mount Graham is extremely sacred to the Native Americans in that area, and we'll get into that into another video. But it also is known as a hot spot for alien activity or UFO sightings. That's not it. On top of having this large telescope in an area that is known for UFO spottings, they also have another telescope that they share with the University of Arizona dubbed Lucifer 1. It provides a powerful tool to gain spectacular insights into the universe from the Milky Way to extreme distant galaxies. So again, I say, if anyone was going to be able to see alien life in our skies, it would be the Vatican. For my next piece of evidence, Pope Francis literally said he would baptize little green Martians if they asked him to. Now, why would he say something like this? He is the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, and if aliens are real, it brings all of religion into question. So I'm confused. But I'm not stopping there. This is painted inside the Vatican. Please look at the top left and the top right-hand corner. What do you see? Those look like little spaceships to me, but let's get closer. You're telling me those aren't little men in spaceships? And then this is carved into the side of the Vatican. That looks like a little alien man, right? That doesn't look like a normal man. And then let's just go back to what they're sitting in front of. What the heck is that? That looks like something straight out of an alien sci-fi movie.
She disappeared without a trace, but the Vatican might have taken her.
Let's talk about how the Vatican is hiding a time-traveling device from us.
You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet?
Certainly.
Alien and you want to get baptized, the Pope is in favor of it. In fact, during one of his daily masses, is that how you say it, daily masses, or during daily mass, he talked about the right to be baptized and how the Catholic Church should accept people to be baptized with open arms. And he said, even if they're Martians, let me read you his exact quote. He says, if tomorrow an expedition of Martians came, and some of them came to us here, Martians, right, green with that long nose and big ears, just like children paint them, and one says, but I want to be baptized, what should happen? And he basically says, baptize the shit out of them.
The castle, perched above a glistening green lake near Rome, has a magical aura. It's the Pope's summer residence, and it is here that Vatican astronomers have for decades studied the heavens. Perched on the roof of this 17th century castle are two domes, holding telescopes that Vatican astronomers have been using since the 1930s. Now they have much more powerful telescopes for their research located in Tucson, Arizona. But it is here at Castel Gandolfo that the astronomers have their headquarters.
How do we know Frodo is alive?
One would almost expect to find the wizard Gandalf from Lord of the Rings striding through the long hallways in his dark robes with his wooden staff and flowing beard. But instead, inside the walls of this castle, an unassuming Jesuit from Argentina leads the Vatican astronomical research and has recently caused an uproar by opening a debate about aliens.
In a universe so big, huge, I would say, as the one where we live, with 100 billion of galaxies, with each galaxy with 100 billion of stars. Probably with many of these stars having planets, it could be possible that life could evolve as the way we know on Earth.
Father Funes says he is not sure if other forms of life would be more or less intelligent than humans, but he is convinced that the existence of aliens is not a contradiction with the Catholic faith. There has been no word from top Vatican officials about Funes' comments, but some people on the street find them odd. Richard Charnock was taking a group from the All Hallows Catholic High School on a trip to Italy when he heard about the comments from the Vatican astronomer.
I think it's preposterous that they're saying that. You know, there is one humans that God created. You know, we come back to the Bible. He didn't create Adam, Eve, and E.T., did he? It was Adam and Eve. And so, you know, and I just think it goes against what we believe as Christians.
We probably won't be seeing aliens at Mass anytime soon, but the Vatican's chief astronomer does say that there could exist other forms of life outside Earth. And he says if they do exist, they are God's creatures. Trisha Thomas, The Associated Press, Castel Gandolfo.
This video proves further that the Pope is an antichrist.
Reported comments by the Pope could signal a major shift for the Catholic Church and its views on homosexuality.
Said, and I told them, Holy Father, they have slandered me, the Cardinal Errázuriz and others, to you. Said that I've lost my faith and said that I'm this perverted person. And I worry that you think that being gay is bad. And he immediately said to me, look, Juan Carlos, God loves you that way. God made you that way. The Pope loves you, and you have to love yourself.
Catholic priests can now bless same-sex couples. Pope Francis formally changed Vatican policy today, insisting people seeking God's love and mercy shouldn't be subject to an exhaustive moral analysis.
Pope Francis did not travel to Dubai for the COP28 climate conference and instead sent the Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. In his speech, he called for a greater commitment to combating climate change and its social consequences. On Sunday, the Pope was scheduled to inaugurate a pavilion at the conference that is dedicated to world religions. It was attended by several leaders of different faiths. The Pope instead sent a video message from Rome to express his gratitude for the initiative, which demonstrates the good that religious leaders can do when they work together.
Demos ejemplo como representantes religiosos para mostrar que un cambio es posible, para manifestar estilos de vida respetuosos y sostenibles, y pidamos encarecidamente a los responsables de las naciones que en la casa común sea preservada. Nos lo piden en particular los pequeños, los pobres, cuyas oraciones llegan hasta el trono del Altísimo.
Pope Francis was unable to travel to Dubai because of flu-like symptoms and lung inflammation. He called the decision bitter but necessary.
Overseas out of Ireland in an emotional showdown. Pope Francis facing a critical reception in that Catholic nation. The Pope addressing the unrelenting shadow of scandal and international outrage, speaking of the Vatican's pain and shame, but some calling it too little, too late. ABC's David Wright is with the Pope in Ireland.
Today in Dublin, Pope Francis got an earful about the Church's response to the sexual abuse crisis. Some of the signs there in the crowd clearly not meant to welcome him.
Above all, Holy Father, we ask that you listen to the victims and survivors.
Pope Francis did listen, sitting down behind closed doors for an hour-and-a-half meeting with 8 survivors of clerical sexual abuse.
We're hopeful that he will challenge what he referred to as the high church or the elite within the church who are guilty of corruption and cover-up. He literally said that they were filth in a toilet.
Francis acknowledged people have a right to be outraged by the church's response to what he called repulsive crimes against children.
Questi crimini repugnanti.
And he said it remains a source of pain and shame for the Catholic community.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight. And these shield boys.
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
I would like to solve the puzzle. I would like to solve the puzzle. I would like to solve the puzzle. I would like to solve